Hi and welcome to Veganland, where we bring you news, ideas, insights and all sorts of other things to help make your vegan life and your vegan activism more interesting. And today we have got a super interesting one, and it's the Only Animals Vegans. What is going on? And breathe. I was chatting to a friend the other day, and she mentioned that she'd seen a Facebook post and it said something like, keep intersectionals out of the movement. And I noticed that this word intersectionals really does seem to be a bit of a kind of a dog whistle and tends to sort of like summon people, vegans, to one side, the keep intersectionals out of the movement side, or let's talk about how we can be inclusive. So it is a term that really is quite triggering. Let's look at the Only Animals side of things today. So these are the people, and we will all know some of them. Maybe some of the Only Animals vegans are watching today. Welcome. So these are the people that tend to adopt the position of we're vegan for the animals, only the animals, and then you always talk about sort of like diversity or oppression is just diverting us all from the really, really serious, important issues of the animals. The animals don't have a voice, and we are a voice for the animals. That's effectively the position of what I am calling the Only Animals or the Only Animals vegan. Then I was clearing out my mobile phone and I found this message, which another friend had sent me, from a WhatsApp conversation, and this seemed also extremely relevant. So the friend had said, oh, so we got George Martin coming to our city. Anyone else think he's an arse? Fairly, that's it. So the response that she got was, George is a wonderful, compassionate man, a fantastic, inspirational activist for the animals. Negative sniping and bitching about other activists and putting people down does nothing good for our cause except needlessly undermine and hurt good people. I, the writer, have been on the receiving end of such treatment myself and think it is ignorant, mean-spirited and destructive. If you have nothing good to say about others, then shut the fuck up. And think before opening your mouth and sharing toxic thoughts that poison the movement. There is somebody who's been massively triggered. There is an Only Animals vegan in full triggered mode. Only a minute later, some other person on the chat replied, to be fair, she only said she thought he was an arse. Which shows the difference between being triggered and not being triggered. Only Animals vegans, let's have a think about their position and their triggers and the benefits of that position. I have come to the conclusion from the research I've done, it's a little bit like the position of, a religious fundamentalist. And in this case, you've kind of got the whole veganism thing occupying the similar sort of like psychic, emotional and mental space that a religious or spiritual belief would occupy. For the Only Animals vegans, they are the good people battling for the voiceless animals against the demonic hordes of the non-vegans. And the only people who are worse in this context than the non-vegans are the evil, meddling intersectionalists who deserve to be punished. Why do they deserve to be punished? Because all of this is part of an authoritarian mindset, an authoritarian personality type, which apparently about 33% of people have in places like America and the EU. That's what we're looking at. It's a personality type. And because they're coming from, it ends up being a place of hatred because they're scared and they're trying to protect their position. But that legitimizes and enables them to punish the people who are going off message, i.e. the intersectionist so-called vegans, or whoever else. And you can use cruelty, shaming, derision, hatred and bigotry, according to psychologist Maisel. They're fueled by hatred and a powerful need to punish. The first benefit to the only animals vegans of this position is it is a simple position that casts them in the role of an angel saviour or a warrior. A lot of them like to portray themselves and their mates see them as warriors. There's no question asked. The truth is held as the enemy, according to the psychologist Maisel. They lie, and they also can be quite bullying. The second benefit for the only animals vegans is that there is no need for any kind of analysis or critique of the status quo in that position. So it's like the animals are oppressed, we want to sort it out, every little thing we can do is a great thing. It's not really the wise, it's like every sort of vegan burger, every sort of consumer vegan thing that you can do, every little helps, every conversation, it's like that. It's not like looking at the structures, whether it's structural oppressions or neoliberalism or anything like that. So it's a very simple position to be occupying. The third benefit is because it's simple, it's a lot less work. Mentally, you've set your standard in the ground of your only animals position, and it's, everybody's really clear because it's got lots of emotional appeal. It's not like more complex positions which have a lot of nuance and discussions, and then maybe if it's like this and then there's a maybe like that. No. And it's also kind of, by virtue of that, anti-intellectual and anti-rational. So the fourth benefit is that this strong belief that only animals vegans are really dedicated to other animals, that kind of makes you very special amongst the vegan community, doesn't it? Because you're the actual real vegans, whereas everybody else is just sort of like, basically barfing on about, human issues and being annoying, and you're being the voice for the animals. And again, you've got this strong need for control. And of course, if you feel like it's all simple and you're completely on message and everybody else is deviating from the message, your strong need for control, which is part of the authoritarian mindset, will just feel it's absolutely legitimate to enforce control in any way that you can. That's the fifth benefit, is that because the authoritarians have a very hierarchical notion, a very hierarchical worldview, of course, they believe very strongly in the white male saviours of the movement. And that's integral. And so they will be the ones that are sort of, again, up in arms if they're challenged about this. Because it's integral to the authoritarian position to have a hierarchy. So you've got the St. Eds of Earthlings, the Joeys of Carbstrongs, and then you've got, mukbang in barley types. So, and they're all doing the most for the animals. So why would anybody except a nasty, annoying naysayer who could do with a good slap even question these absolute perfect role models? And we can give them our Patreon money. We can give them our money, and it's like in medieval times, people paid for indulgences from the priest. So they got time knocked off the time that they would spend in purgatory. And it's a bit like that with the saviour vegans. You can give them your Patreon money, and it doesn't matter what they do because they have been anointed. They have been anointed. They are the anointed ones. They are the chosen ones. Obviously, the non-animal only vegans have a different position, and of course it all kicks off. The sixth benefit is that they're easily triggered to legitimate rage. And of course, if you're in this very strong fixed position and drama, and there seems to be a propensity for kind of like kicking off and being quite verbally abusive or whatever, because you're so angry and you're so, full of that awful anger, and you don't see a reason really to control it. What are the implications of all of this? Because it's not, as I said, this is what's happening in the vegan movement with authoritarian personality types. But the research has been looking at sort of more global positions, and this was research by psychologists Karen Stenner and Jonathan Haidt, Haidt, who analysed a 2016 European survey of the EU and the US populations, and they found out that 33% of white respondents were predisposed to authoritarianism, which they said was the principal determinant of general intolerance of difference around the globe. So it's a big thing, it's not just in the vegan community. This tendency tends to lie dormant until a threat is perceived, at which point it is activated. So the animals only vegans will be happily doing their own thing until somebody questions that view, and then it's like, boing, off we go. What triggers it in the wider world? The conditions that significantly activate authoritarians and generally exacerbate the expression of their authoritarianism in manifestly intolerant attitudes and behaviours are what are normative threats, which are threats to oneness and sameness. So again, the identity of the vegan movement, and this is why people be saying things like, you're just, you're splitting the movement, you're being divisive, because they have this very strong belief that discussion is splitting the movement, and they see that as like a personal threat. So the things that in a diverse society, in complex modern societies, which don't share a single racial, ethnic identity, the things that make us an us and us, that make us one and the same, are common authority and shared values. So you can see this really coming out in the vegan space, where again, challenging the common authority, i.e. saviour vegans, or the notions of voices for the animals, is seen as problematic. And that's more than threatening. As I said, it's not just the vegans in the vegan space though. These authors say Western liberal democracies have now exceeded many people's capacity to tolerate them. So what they're saying there is that human beings, we were designed for one set of experiences, and Western liberal democracies have sort of taken us kind of so off piece that we don't really know what we're doing. And it can be very difficult for some people. Quote, the things that multiculturalists believe will help people appreciate and thrive in a democracy, appreciating difference, talking about difference, displaying and applauding difference, are the very conditions that encourage authoritarians not to heights of tolerance, but to their intolerant extremes. So again, we can see this is exactly what's happening in the vegan space. Now, it's very important to say that the authoritarian personality type is just another way of being human, and it's not intrinsically necessarily evil. It's a natural variation in the human political character. It's not really, it's largely heritable and relatively immutable. It doesn't change much, and most importantly, pretty much immune to, and in fact more likely to be aggravated by, democratic experiences, socialisation, and the promotion of multiculturalism. That is still applicable in the vegan space. Solutions. According to these authors, the solutions may include shared social institutions, practices and experiences, unifying celebrations, common rights, etc. So I suppose you could be thinking, well, maybe sort of like the vegan marches in London or some city centre that people go to. Obviously with COVID it's not going to be happening. And there's probably other things that I can't necessarily think of off the top of my head, but it'd be interesting if you can put down some shared social institutions, practices and experiences, unifying celebrations in the comments that you think might help. Alongside less appearance of or public airing of political conflict and partisanship. So that's basically saying that when you kind of get this very oppositional chats that often happen, these very drama creating YouTube videos, which seems to be a large chunk of the vegan space. It's not the only space, but apart from sort of recipe videos and a few factual based things, there is a lot of drama, polarizing drama, and it starts with this sort of people interrogating people on the street, people interrogating more people on the street, shouting and yelling a lot at other people. That tends to be a bit of a vegan thing, so that's making it all worse, apparently. Other things that we can do is working across the aisle. I'm not quite sure what they mean by working across the aisle. Less demonisation, and this is key, greater civility in public discourse, as would voluntary commitment to a more restrained and temperate coverage in both traditional and social media. So I think this is the key takeaway for people engaging on social media, and obviously we all do, is to try and maintain civility and not to be so polarised and polarising, not to be amplifying the polarisation with these sort of drama-ridden sort of like response videos to a response video to this person said that, to that person's no longer a vegan, how evil are they? You know, all this sort of stuff is basically making it more toxic and more difficult for us all. That feels like a lot. So thank you for your fabulous kind attention today. I'd love to hear your comments and thoughts. If there's any sort of videos that you'd like me to do, please put that in the comments as well. If you've got any more thoughts about this topic, which is really important, please share them with me. Civility, civility, civility. And as you all know, this is Animal Justice Emergency. Together we can think, organise and act to end the war on other animals. So if you like this, please click the like button, click the share button, click the subscribe button, all the buttons, just click them, and we will be forever grateful. Peace. You take care.